computer. Shit, hold on. Let me stop this bitch real quick. Pause. All right, ladies and gentlemen. What's up, buddy? So this is a new project that is being created between myself and Wesley, the gentleman on the other side of the screen. And we don't have a name yet, but we do have a certain spirit or ethos that we want to espouse and promote and get the word out, essentially, with what we're trying to do here. So as you can see, he's younger, I'm older, so whatever, we can probably come up with something like Latin name, like something the older and something the younger, who knows, kind of like how they did with Pliny or whoever, however. So yeah. I want you, Wesley, I want you to take it over for a second in order to introduce your thoughts about the show, or at least where you want to see it go.
Yeah. Well, first off, for those that don't know, me and Marco are really close friends in the space. Yes, we have a huge age gap. I'm 25. I think you just turned 40, 80 or something. I look
good for 80, dude.
Yeah. So obviously we share different life experiences, and he and I talk a lot in depth and very like philosophically behind the scenes. And we thought, hey, we should be sharing these. Not I won't call them epiphanies. I'm not going to be that like egocentric or whatever, but just like reflections, kind of like Marcus Aurelius style of the sales space, and to be a little bit raw and just organic and authentic with what we're experiencing, and kind of just level with people, not really show just the polished side of sales, which everybody talks about. But we're also not going to be a bunch of jackasses that no one wants to listen to either. We're going to just kind of share our experience. We've both put numbers on the board. We've both worked together alongside each other in multiple different offers. So that's like the purpose of the podcast. Today I kind of wanted to talk about involuntary suffering, mainly because Marco just went through this Spartan race. And Marco, you can kind of talk about that a little bit if you want, but I do know that when I went through my half marathon, that was something that was a very emotional, a very intense, a very, if you want to call it spiritual, it was a very like, it was something I really did not want to do, but I knew I had to do. And after doing it, I was a different person. So I don't know if you want to share your experience about what you just went through this past weekend. Sure.
Well, I'm glad you brought up your half marathon, because I also wanted to talk about that. And I just want to back it up one bit, is that, yes, there is a gap in our ages, obviously. And the friendship that we have, what I truly appreciate is the fact that you and I have these philosophical conversations constantly, right? And that's my jam, to have that type of talk with folks. I don't care how old or where you come from or that kind of a thing. If we can hang on that level and have these real, raw, just whatever it is, whether it's related to sales and life, then it's like, then we're going to be homies for sure. And that's what's been going on with you and I for quite a while. Ever since we were on fucking Surplus.
Yep.
That's going to be another story for another time, folks.
Way back in the day.
So it's just like a year ago and a half.
Yeah.
It's so fucking yeah, dude. So I am not as sore as I was from the half marathon I did back in October. Although the upper body has worked more because of just the nature of that race. And it's for me, going into endurance sports definitely has this very Zen-like quality. I was actually thinking about it during that race on Saturday, how you're forced, if you want to do well in these things, you in some sense, you have to drop into like this, like no mind. And I forget what it's called in Zen, like Mushin, if I'm not mistaken, like this place of no mind and just being ultimately present with everything that's going on. What I love about it is that you're outside, and for a lot of people who have seen my content when I'm running without a shirt, you're really in touch with the elements. I just love to have that type of presence when I'm doing my shit. Mm-hmm. And there's something about endurance sports that there's also pain associated with it, right? So you're voluntarily putting yourself in an uncomfortable position. You are literally signing up for discomfort. You're literally signing up for some kind of pain. When I was in basic training, I remember one of the drill sergeants saying, on a long ass road march. He says, pain purifies. And I was just like, oh my God, what the fuck does that even mean, dude? So as I got, more into life and having more pain and understanding, I was like, okay, I know now what he means, right? Because you feel so invigorated after these sort of things, after these events. And I know it gets very emotional for me as well. And I would say there's also a spiritual component too, because of how good you're feeling afterwards with that sense of accomplishment.
Yeah.
Now, this last race was something was very special for me because my son competed earlier in the day. He did a half-mile run. He was so stoked about it. All the kids were having fun. I go to do my race. I'm thinking 6 miles, 25 obstacles. How difficult can it be? Especially when I'm looking at the participants of the other people racing, right? All of a sudden I'm looking at this dude with a belly going like, really, dude? I'm like, all right, this can't be that hard. Mile 4, my legs cramp up like no one's business. I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me, dude. I was like, I run 4 miles for fucking breakfast. Like literally, like no one's business. I run 4.5 miles, piece of cake.
I know you do, yeah.
Yeah. And all of a sudden it happens. And I'm like, oh my God, this fucking sucks, dude. I was walking, I'm limping. I had to stop, and I'm just like, this is insane. Like, not even a mile ago, people saw me tackle this hard ass obstacle, and I'm just like grunting and yelling my way through it, like so I was just getting so upset at how like just difficult it was. People like you can hear people in the background going, "God damn, you see what that fucking guy did?" And then all of a sudden now that fucking guy is all, and they're fucking running by me, going like, "Are you okay, dude?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll be fine."
Right.
So it's just this beautiful moment of just both sides, right? Of like killing it in 1 minute and then getting killed by it in the other. Right. You decided to do a half marathon last year, right?
I did. There's a little bit of like a reverb happening.
Hold on.
I don't know
It's
if you
it's the garage. Hold on. I'm gonna pause for a second.
okay.
It's the garage door opening downstairs, man.
Oh, that's okay. We could have kept it in. Keep it.
No, I didn't. I just turned off my mic. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Um, what was your question? Sorry, you said I ran a half, and then I didn't hear the rest.
So here's the thing, right? You decided to run a half marathon last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you did it
last November. Yeah,
last November, and you did it like with little to no preparation, if I recall.
yeah. Yeah, that was purely like, and that's actually one of the goals when I was like, and we'll talk about our backgrounds and things like that on another podcast. But one of the things that motivated me to get off my ass and get out of this depressive state, which I still am in, but I was like in this idle space, was one to prove to myself that I could be a closer that makes 10K a month consistently, which I did, but also to run a half marathon because I didn't believe it was possible. Right, I had high blood pressure, had a cramp, hole in my leg from birth, from a situation that happened, and so I was like, okay, this is going to be something that I don't think I can do. If I do it, it'll challenge everything I believe about myself, because that's how little I thought of myself. Some people half marathon, it's like a no big deal. I got a friend, Kevin, he runs like all the time, and to him that's like, yeah, it's hard, but it's not like impossible, right? So it was a personal journey, just like you said. It was like a transformation of the soul. And I'll tell you what you just said, right? Like you have all these expectations when you get into something, and you almost like dream up the scenario. Like, I'm going to get there. I'm going to be the first guy to do the thing. I got there. First off, it was freezing. It was like 29 degrees or 30. It was like freezing. Like it was like ice in the grass and stuff. So I'm like, that sucks. Second off, I didn't know that I signed up for like technically what's the thing where you go through the woods? Cross country. Yeah. I'm literally running up hills. There's rocks. I'm tripping 4 times every lap. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. But I did it. I finished the race. Right. And that was the whole purpose of me even doing it. And I told myself that because there were multiple times before the race started where I was like, dude, I'm just going to go home, or maybe I'll just do half of it. And even like halfway through, when I was like dying, I was like, this is enough. Like, I've never done this before. I've never ran 7 miles continuously, like in this type of condition. But I told myself, like, the reason I came here wasn't even to finish the race. It was to conquer the fear of within myself that was stopping me from wanting to do it.
Mhm.
Right. And I think
Mhm.
there's a lot of talk like in the sales space and online about doing things that make your life easier, like
Mhm.
the path of least resistance,
Yeah. Yeah.
or to like design this lifestyle where you can kick your feet up and just do nothing.
Right.
Right. And I think, David Goggins kind of inspired me a little bit with the run there, but I think it's almost like the opposite. Like I think we need to design our lives in such a way where we're actually like optimizing for suffering, right? Because I feel like every time I do something that I absolutely hate and didn't think I could do, I'm stronger afterward and more fulfilled as a person. And I look back with more gratefulness and I have more
Mhm.
peace and things like that. And yeah, it was an emotional race too. I was like on the last lap, I was like crying to
Mhm.
myself and I was
Mhm.
like, dude, and I was talking to myself too. I was like,
Mhm.
I'm sorry for not showing up for you and
Mhm.
whatever. And it was like, wow, that was pretty intense. Um, so did you finish your race? Like, did you get to the end where you like actually finished it, or how did it end for you?
I fucking so I was limping along, and just this is what happened. This is where I fucked up. I had a larger breakfast than normal before race time, like around 7, and my race time was 11:45, and I thought I was gonna have it already in my guts and not in my stomach. I was sorely mistaken. That's where I fucked up big time. So now I have all this blood focused on in my stomach and not going to my muscles where it needs to go, hence the cramping. And I was going to finish it no matter what. If I had to crawl over the goddamn line, I was
Mhm.
going to. And so I'm like hobbling along, and towards the finish line, that's when the spectators can see you. And guess who sees me? Is my boy, and there he is. And he's just like, Dad, Dad. And I'm just like, oh my god, dude. I'm like, yeah, here we go. And ended up going to, they had like two more obstacles, the slip wall, and went up there. My legs held up well, and then the dunk wall where you have to go into the lake and go underneath this wall. And then finally towards the finish line, I had enough in me with my legs, but they were strong enough where I could actually run across. It wasn't that fast of a run, but I finished it. I fucking finished it. It took me
Right.
2 hours. It took me 2 hours, right? Where I was just like, okay, if I didn't have the injury, probably would have been sooner. Who cares, man? Whatever. I finished it. My boy got to see me finish it, and that was that. It was definitely a very emotional experience for me. I was elated, overjoyed. A very similar experience to when I did the half marathon, especially towards the end
Mhm.
of that half marathon. I had a very similar experience as you. I got very emotional as well. I was so tired. I was. It's a different kind of hurt for each of those races. The marathon was way, it's just the lower body pain was just unreal. And then for the last race, just the overall pain was also not necessarily unreal, but I was just like, damn, dude, okay, this was harder than I thought. Okay, great. And there's always the post event come down, the post race come down, right?
Mhm.
The next day where it's like you're not feeling as yay because, well, you've tapped out everything the day before. And
Right.
that's, I think, um, a lesson in life. And going back to what you were saying earlier, with not just, let's just say this is not just within the sales space, but also like in the maybe entrepreneurial space, in the business space, whatever you want to call it, with just my limited understanding of being exposed to it for the past 2 years. There's definitely this push. I would say there's two sides that you see: this push about creating systems to make your life easier and shit like that. Cool. That's great. But then this other side where it's like, and you got to do the ice baths, and you got to do this crazy ass morning routine, and you got to do this and you got to do that in order to
Yeah.
be able to do this. And then there's the other camp that says, no, don't do anything. Just fucking get up, have your coffee enema, and just get to work and fucking work 26 hours in a day, 8 days a week, fucking grind for free if you have to. All these things, dude, that just like scream in some sense like unsustainability.
Yeah. Well, I think it's marketing, right? That like got us into this, right? Where we're like, man, we only have to work 2 hours a month and make $20 million a day or whatever, right? Like, but the reality is when you get into sales, it is a competitive sport, That's what
Yes.
this is.
Yes.
We are athletes, right?
Yes.
And they talk about it all the time. Like when you get into sales, now they're like, they reveal the curtain. Like, no, you actually have to, like, this is a performance-based business, and it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, all life is, you can think of it as performance-based and competition, but especially in sales, like you literally eat the meat you kill. Like you, so I think if you're not thinking that way, like I need to become the best version of myself that I
Yeah.
possibly can be,
Yeah.
then it's not even just about like you're going to do well in sales. It's like you won't be happy. Like you're going to have all these expectations. You're going to come in with a sense of entitlement, and you're not going to do very well. So
Yeah.
there might be a couple like newbies coming in here, or new guys and gals listening to this that are coming into sales thinking that they can create the optimal lifestyle, and that is possible. But that comes at the end of the mountain that you have to climb, which is suffering and struggle, and like getting to that place where you can have that reward at the end of the day. Like you're not going to just walk into, unless I'm wrong, maybe some other people have their own opinions on that, but I don't think you're going to walk into a sales gig where you're making 10K a sale and working 2 hours a week and whatever without proving your stripes first, right? And like actually developing yourself first. And even me, like I've had like I've always relied on my skill set. Like I got really good really quick, thanks to, and we can talk about that on our next call. My first offer, I got pretty good pretty quick, and then I got complacent. I was like, all right, I can just sit here, and I let my depression be a crutch, and just be like, all right, I'm not really going to do much. I'm just going to kind of do enough to get by. And then, you know, we had a slowdown in leads last month, and I got taken off the rotator,
Right.
and I was like, this sucks.
Yeah.
Like I'm never going to have this happen again. So now I'm like reevaluating my whole thing of like, well, I've only been operating at like 10% of my potential, because I've just been kind of seeing this as like another type of job where, yeah, I mean, I made like over 110 grand this year already, but it's like 20% of what I'm capable of actually outputting, because I'm just being complacent. And if you're not swimming, you're going to sink, right? So it's competitive, and there's other guys that want it more than you, and that'll take more calls and work more hours and whatever, and eventually you're going to get left behind, right? So that's just the sad reality of I guess life, but especially sales. And so it doesn't have to be very grim, because if you can create like systems where you just become that type of person, you become the type of person that is disciplined, which Marco, I would say you very much are, right? Like for you, it's just a natural fit. Like you wake up super early, you do your run every day. You're one of the most disciplined people I know. And I think if you can create a life where you start to, like David Goggins says, callous your mind and actually pursue things that are uncomfortable instead of avoiding them and trying to create a life around comfort, you optimize for a life where you're actually seeking discomfort, then it will become easy for you. Like you will have opportunities that open up. Your life will seem to, you will seem to get lucky at times, because you put in so much work on the back end that you have everything that you wanted to in the first place.
What is, I like to define luck as opportunity and preparation coming together. That's my preferred definition of luck: opportunity and preparation coming together. I think we need to, while we're talking about this, differentiate the difference between discomfort and suffering. I think there's a big difference, because the connotations between the word suffering and discomfort, right?
Mm.
When I hear suffering, well, the first thing that comes up is I start thinking about Buddhism, and then of course the Four Noble Truths and life is suffering because of attachment, so that kind of a thing, dukkha. Um, but the kind of thing that we're talking about, I think, is more in line with the usage of the word discomfort, right? Is that we're choosing to do uncomfortable things in order to give us an edge in life, in order for us to essentially have that hit of feel good drugs that our body produces because of that discomfort. You don't you, well, you get some feel good drugs when you're doing some comfortable things such as having sex, right? But then it's like you can't be fucking all the time and expect to perform and do well on sales calls, right? You're just going to be like,
Right.
you know, it's just one of those things. It's a different type of thing. It's a different type of release and buildup, right? So I think I got a little lost right there with just wanting to have that clarification between discomfort and suffering. But I want to take it back to what we were talking about earlier. So I'm gonna need your help right now to bring me back to that.
Okay.
I just derailed us right now.
Oh, I don't know. I'm on like 2 brain cells from this cold. So I don't know. I probably did derail myself. Um, so what was I talking about? Yeah, I like to use the word suffering. And again, we talk about, and this is why I love you, right? We have differences of opinion and stuff, and I think it sharpens both of us, right? We have different opinions.
Yep.
And JD, our mentor, mutual mentor, talks about our belief systems and how it's like an operating system that benefits us in the moment and it's gotten us the results we want. But if we want to upgrade, then it's probably not optimal. But every belief system has its purpose. So maybe I'm operating off of a belief system that pursuing suffering is beneficial, but it's not the most optimal belief system to have long term. I just like to frame it in that way because suffering is something that I easily want to avoid. Like it's something that I don't like. I think is something that like I want to optimize for happiness, right?
Right.
And when I think of the word suffering, I think of something that I don't want to do that's shitty, where there's no really benefit to doing it, but I have to do it anyways. Right. And like what's his name? Andrew Huberman. I was listening to a podcast with him the other day, and he was talking about that too. There's a part of our brain, the nervous system, where if you do things, not just things that are tough, like you take that extra rep after like your set, but you like to work out. So or like you like run an extra mile, but you like to run. He's like, if you do things that you actually hate to do and you do them, kind of like what Goggins talks about, you'll literally start to callous your mind. You build this like willpower muscle, right?
It's that
So I guess
friction. I think he was talking about. You reduce limbic friction when you do tasks that you don't necessarily want to do. I think that's what he was talking about. And he was, if I'm not mistaken, he talks about doing those almost first thing in the morning. Like that has to be like one of the first things you do is to get those things out of, or make those things like just part of your day to day.
Yeah, just do something every day that you don't want to do, right?
Well,
and to be fair, I use discomfort too. Like I have a sticky note that says seek, or what is it? Like pursue discomfort.
Seek discomfort. I can get down with that. Yeah, I've seen that shirt on a homie, one of the salesmen that said seek discomfort, where I was like, yeah, that's cool. Like that's, which I think is the case, right? Let's think about it. Getting up early to do a fucking morning run, that's uncomfortable. It's not necessarily suffering. It's uncomfortable. When I hear suffering is like the first thing, again, it's like, it's almost like, Holocaust style shit, that's like, whoa, that's fucking suffering. Or some dude going through fucking stage 4, stage 5 cancer, and he's fucking terminal. And he's, that's suffering. But us in these essentially privileged American lives that we live, I mean, fuck, dude, like, you got a nice spot. I got a nice spot. We're like having a Zoom meeting, you got these fucking things, like belly's full from lunch. All right. Like for the most part, for the rest of the world, you and I live like kings. And for most of our friends who are going to be listening to this, you guys live like kings and queens as well. And so it's one of those things where,
it's
yes,
how you look at
right. And so then it's like, I can get down with the idea of seeking discomfort all day long. I think a person should seek some sort of discomfort on a daily for a bunch of different reasons. Besides the pushing of the body, besides the pushing of the mind and the spirit, to get those feel good drugs, the feel good hormones that the body creates, right? To get that not that cheap dopamine, but that dopamine that comes with work, right? To earn that on the daily. On the weekends, I like to sleep in. I just want to put that disclaimer out, right? On the weekends, I sleep in till about 5 or 6. So it's just
no, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that you gotta improve 1%, right? I mean, talking to me, I like, I am not the optimal human being, but
Who is?
yeah,
Let's
I
see what.
wanna I wanna wrap that that topic in a bow. So um you always say this a lot to me, right? Because like I'll come to you, and this is probably has to do with our age gap. Like you're wiser than me, like, or have more life experience. Like I'll come to you and like complain about something, and you'll just twist the story. Well, like you just did. Like, well, is it really suffering because what da 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 da. Um, I think that I think that suffering, well, I'm using the verbiage that Goggins uses a lot, and he's an inspiration of mine, and maybe he's like the way extreme of it, but he always says that like you have to suffer. He always says that.
Mm-hmm.
um I think that what would you define, like what something that you would do right now, like a physical activity or a project? What would you define? Is there something that you could do that you would classify as suffering, or is suffering in your definition something that only someone else, like you said, the Holocaust, and something, some external circumstance that is out of your control casts upon you? Like how would you define, like what would suffering look like in your paradigm? Because I think you've created a mindset which is very stoic, that doesn't have suffering in the equation at all. Because no matter what it is, it could be, you could be getting your skin peeled off like Viktor Frankl, and I don't think he got his skin peeled off, but you would see it as like this learning experience or something. So like,
Well,
is there,
I think there's, oh man, I think there's like upper limits and lower limits to some things, man, in this life. And the in order for me to say that I'm suffering in a situation would be something like, and this is an extreme example, but it's something that comes across my fucking head from time to time. It would be a nuclear holocaust, and I lose all communications with my partner and my son, who's 2 hours from me, and I have no idea whether they're alive or dead. And let's say I end up living, right?
holy shit,
And I
that's a
have
pretty
no,
high bar for suffering.
yeah, yeah.
So
Well,
so your
it's
kid is hurt in
it,
trouble or something like that.
basically not knowing if he's alive or dead, and knowing that in order to get to him on foot with my fucking AR and my Glock and some fucking water and silver coins, and the old people here, I have to, like, this is extreme, folks, it's going to kind of fuck you up, but I have to like take out and take care of the old people here because and be like sorry, and then go over to fucking see, and then eventually go, bah, it's a doomed mission. Fucked up suffering in that regard. It's like this mental anguish. A
Mm,
very, very extreme example, right? Um, again, there's the timer. All right,
we got a couple minutes.
we got a couple of minutes to wrap it up. This is a whole. I mean, man, this is an expansive conversation that we could have gone easily, a whole hour into. Um,
And it's very much us to end on a note of this like philosophical divergence.
it's just it's a I find the reframes to be very important, right?
I
Go ahead.
I actually agree with you. I think your stance is the stance that I'm probably going to evolve to have someday. I think for me, for people, I'm just going to speak to my experience because
Of course, of
I'm an
course.
idiot. I'm 25 years old. My paradigm is not optimal, is not the optimal paradigm that I want to exist in, right? So my paradigm is that of I am a depressed person. I have depression, and I have these mental blocks that I can't really get a wrap on. I'm trying actively to fix it. And I believe someday I will evolve to this type of person. But to get out of that paradigm, the current paradigm I am in is such a way where if I try to go out of that paradigm, it's going to read that as suffering. Like what you said, suffering is something that you perceive as like like my paradigm is not perceiving it as something that's beneficial. That's the way, like when I went on my half marathon, that was not something I wanted to do. That was not something that I thought was a good idea. I was totally afraid to do it. And for me to get out of the paradigm that I was in, which was extremely low on the scale, I had to pursue that suffering. I had to go past that suffering. I had to suffer so much that like that I broke past that paradigm to where I'm like, oh, I can do it. And then my mind changed its mind about what suffering was, because I was like, wait a second, I just did that. and I didn't die, and I'm here to tell the story. So it was like this weird, like I had to suffer past that point, and then now I grew as a person and calloused my mind to where now if I were to do the same thing or look back, it wouldn't be as hard or wouldn't be the same. I could probably do 2 half marathons this year and not have the same sort of paradigm about it. But I think that's what I mainly mean is like the involuntary or the voluntary suffering is really just to push past the paradigm that you have, because when you do that, it will break and remold. And that remolding process will allow you to maybe have an epiphany that you had. Maybe you've gone through a lot more suffering than I have in your life, that's caused you to callous yourself and reevaluate what really is suffering, because you've already had those micro catastrophes
Yeah,
throughout your
yeah,
life,
yeah.
those traumas that have given you like a true perspective, right?
Yeah. You from my experience, and keep in mind I'm only, I'm a 47-year-old idiot as well, not 25. And from my experience, you what's the word? You acclimate. You acclimate to life. You acclimate to these things. And what you thought was once very difficult and extremely uncomfortable, or even, worthy of being called suffering, turns out to be not as bad as you thought. That's everything from the, you know, from the death of a parent when I was 12, my father first died. That was the saddest day of my life ever. To then experiencing the birth of my son, which is the happiest day of my life ever. So now my life has been bookmarked
Mm.
with extremes of experiences and everything that falls in between all of that. From my first divorce, which was also got me to the point of suicide, and all these other things that I've experienced. But because of this journey of personal development that is so intertwined with sales, entrepreneurship, and all the things that we've learned through our friend and mentor JD, and all the other stuff that we've learned on our own because of the different things that have come up, our conversation, all kinds of shit. The importance of the reframe, and taking a moment and having a pause and going like, okay, is that thing that bad? Right. Let me give you just one
Right.
example before we wrap it up. Here is a thing that I do. This is what I did during the half marathon, and it's what I did during the Spartan race. I had no idea where I was going to go. I didn't look at the fucking course. I didn't look at this. I didn't look at that. I was like, I'm just going to do it and go and experience it as it comes up and figure it out as it comes up. Some people say, oh, well,
Yeah.
maybe you should have a plan, this and that. I'm like, yeah, but there's no fun in that. And so
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah. And last note on that is you hit the nail on the head, right? It's the way that you look at it. And I think there's some parts of your life, like you said you almost killed yourself with a certain circumstance that happened. And then now looking back, you probably interpret that totally differently than that person, right? You probably interpret that as, well, that was the biggest lesson, the biggest gift. So it's really interesting how at one point in life, things can be perceived as suffering. And then when you go fast forward 20 years or 10 years, or in my case, even 4 years or 5 years, you're like, no, that was actually like the silver lining that made everything make sense. It was the beautiful refinement that, and so I think that's it, right? Is like, I think you and I could both agree that, let's call it pursuing discomfort, right? Challenging your paradigm
Mm-hmm.
is something that's what we should be optimizing for. I think if you were to do that in sales and life, I think that's what's going to give you the ultimate outcome, because if you're optimizing for pleasure, you either grow or die. And if you're trying to be comfortable,
Yeah.
you're just going to keep going down. So
Yeah. Yeah. Pleasure's a poison. Yeah. Pleasure's a poison. I lived a pleasure seeking life for, good God, almost 2 decades when I was growing weed. And it was fun, but it was its own hell realm, and we can have a conversation about that at some other point. But I think it's what literally the importance of pursuing discomfort for its own sake, but also for the things that it brings about from inside, because that's what's really going on. It's this internal, it's an internal quest. And it doesn't matter. I would say this: it doesn't matter how much time goes by. if you have the ability to reframe it, even in that very fucking next moment, cool. Now, if it takes you a fucking month, if it takes you a year, if it takes you 10 years to do a reframe on that thing that you fucking had a tough time with to turn it into something else, that's cool too. Because time is irrelevant.
Yeah.
I know someone right now listening going like, but time and this and that. And it's like, dude, from a grand cosmic scale, from fucking, it's irrelevant, bro. But anyways.
Well, that again, this is why I love you, bro. I say it all the time. We don't have to agree about everything. I do think I took away something, though. I learned something. So hopefully this resonated with somebody. And we're gonna evolve too. Like this podcast and everything. We're just kind of, again, this is our version of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius in the year 2023. So
100%. If Marcus Aurelius knew that his goddamn journal was going to be made public thousands of years later, he probably would have burnt that shit.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, that's all I got. So hopefully that wasn't a train wreck on my end.
No, dude, I think we did great. All right, man.
Awesome.
All right, we're going to end this recording. And folks, I hope you enjoyed it. Catch you on the flip side. Let's see. Stop recording now.